He had never laid a hand on any woman, so why did he hesitate when she asked him to hold her? The door slammed against the frame as the wind howled through the canyon, dust scraping across the floor like dry whispers. She stood there, barefoot and shaking, clutching a burned piece of paper so tight it crinkled. Outside, hooves pounded closer. Inside, he didn't move, just watched her, still as stone, like he was weighing something heavier than the storm. Then she took one step toward him, and he didn't step back. What made him stop? "Tell me where you're watching from." The wind came hard off the high desert, dragging sand across the ground in long, hissing lines. It stung the skin and filled the air with a dry, bitter taste. Somewhere behind her, a horse let out a sharp cry, and another answered. Savannah Reed didn't turn around. Her breath came in short bursts, each step cut deeper than the last. The soles of her feet had given up miles back, torn open by stone and thorn. Now every step left a dark mark in the dust before the wind swallowed it whole. She clutched the paper tighter in her hand. It was soft from sweat. Edges curled and blackened where flame had caught it. The ink had bled in places, but the mark at the bottom still held. A name. A seal. Enough to chain her to something she had never agreed to. A shout carried through the wind. Not close. Not yet. But close enough. Savannah stumbled, caught herself against a low stretch of rock, and pushed forward. The land dipped ahead, a shallow cut through the hills. Beyond it, just barely, she saw a thin ribbon of smoke rising straight into the sky. She fixed her eyes on it. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant someone had stayed. Her throat burned, her legs shook, but she kept moving, down into the cut, up the other side, her fingers never loosening from that paper. The sky had gone dark by the time she reached the fence. It was simple. Wood posts, barbed wire pulled tight, a gate hanging slightly crooked on its hinge. A lantern burned low on a hook beside it, the flame steady despite the wind. Savannah paused there, just for a breath. No sound from the house, no voices, no movement. Behind her, the wind shifted, and with it came the faint rhythm of hooves. She pushed the gate open and stepped through. The yard was hard-packed dirt. A trough sat near the barn, half full, the water inside barely rippling. A saddle rested over the fence rail. Everything had a place. Everything looked used, but never left to ruin. The cabin stood a short distance ahead, one window lit from inside. Warm light spilled out across the porch boards. Savannah climbed the steps. Her hand hovered over the door for a moment. Then she knocked. 3 times. Not loud, but enough. The sound felt too small against the wind. For a second, nothing happened. Then the latch moved. The door opened just enough to show a man standing inside. He filled the frame without trying. Broad shoulders, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, one hand still resting on the edge of the door, the other hanging loose at his side. Lantern light caught along the line of his jaw, the quiet set of his mouth. His eyes went to her face, then to her feet, then to the hand holding the paper. He didn't step closer. "You're a long way from town," he said. His voice was low, not rough, not soft, just steady. Savannah tried to answer, but her throat gave nothing back. The word caught somewhere between breath and sound. She swallowed, tried again. "Water," she said. The man watched her for a moment longer. The wind pushed against her back, lifting the edge of her coat. Somewhere behind, a horse snorted. Closer now. He opened the door wider. "Come inside," he said. She stepped in without waiting. The warmth hit first. Then the smell. Wood smoke, coffee, something cooking low on the stove. The room was plain. Table near the window. A bed along the far wall. A chair pulled close to the fire. Savannah stood just inside the door, not moving any farther. The man closed it behind her, set the latch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he moved to the table, poured water into a tin cup, and set it down within reach, but not close enough to brush her hand. She crossed the room and took it, drank too fast, coughed, slowed down. He watched, not staring, just making sure she didn't fall. "You're hurt," he said. She shook her head. It wasn't true, but it was easier than saying anything else. The wind pressed against the cabin walls. The boards creaked. The fire snapped once, sending a small burst of sparks up the chimney. He leaned back against the table, arms loose at his sides. "You can stay the night," he said. "Storm won't let up before morning." Savannah set the cup down. Her fingers tightened around the rim for a second, then let go. "And after?" she asked. He met her eyes then, fully. "That's yours to decide." Another sound drifted through the wind. Hooves again. Closer this time. Not loud, but enough to reach the porch. Savannah turned her head just slightly. He didn't. Instead, he spoke. "You've got two choices," he said. The words came slow, measured, like he'd thought them through before he said them. "You can walk back out that door," he went on, "and meet whatever's riding up here." The wind rattled the latch. "Or," he said, "you stay inside." He didn't move toward her, didn't reach for her, didn't close the distance. Just waited. Savannah looked down at the paper in her hand. The edges crumbled slightly under her grip. For a moment she thought about dropping it, letting it fall to the floor, letting the fire take it. But her fingers held. Then she stepped past him, not close enough to touch, just far enough to leave the door behind her. "I'll stay," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. He gave a single nod. "Gideon Hale," he said. Savannah didn't answer right away. She moved toward the fire, held her hands out, not quite close enough to feel the full heat. Just enough. Then she spoke. "Savannah Reed." Outside, the hooves passed by the gate, slower now, listening, then fading into the wind. Inside, the fire burned steady. Savannah stood there, the paper still in her hand, as if it had weight of its own. Gideon didn't ask about it. He only turned back to the stove, lifted the lid, and checked the pot like it was any other night. But when he set it down again, he didn't turn his back completely. And Savannah noticed. She noticed everything. The distance he kept. The way he moved around her, not once letting their sleeves brush. The space he left between them, like it mattered. Like it always had. The wind howled once more against the walls. Savannah closed her eyes for a second. Just one. Then opened them again. She didn't run. Not this time. Morning came slow over the high desert. The wind had settled sometime before dawn, leaving the land still and pale under a thin wash of light. Dust clung to everything. The fence posts, the trough, the porch boards where Savannah had stood the night before. Inside, the cabin held its warmth. Savannah woke to the faint scrape of metal on iron. A steady sound. Measured. Not hurried. She lay still for a moment, unsure where she was. Then the smell of coffee found her. She sat up. Her dress had been folded and set over the back of a chair. A blanket covered her legs. She didn't remember pulling it over herself. Across the room, Gideon Hale stood at the stove. He didn't turn when she moved, just poured coffee into 2 tin cups and set one on the table. "Drink while it's hot," he said. Savannah swung her feet to the floor. The cuts along her soles had dried into dark lines. She pressed down carefully, testing the weight, then stood. The cup waited where he'd left it. Not too close, not too far. She picked it up. The heat settled into her hands first, then her chest as she took a slow sip. Bitter. Strong. Real. Gideon stepped past her on his way to the door. "Water's low," he said. "Well's out back." He didn't ask if she could manage it. He stepped outside. Savannah watched the door close, then looked down at the cup again. Steam curled up in the quiet. Outside, she found the well behind the house, a wooden frame worn smooth by use. The rope hung coiled at the side, bucket resting against the post. She took hold of it. The first pull slipped. The second held. The rope bit into her palms as she drew the bucket up, water sloshing over the edge. She steadied it, breath tight, then carried it toward the trough. Halfway there, her foot caught on a rut. The bucket tilted. Before it could fall, a hand moved in, close enough to stop the swing, but not touching her. Gideon's hand. He steadied the bucket by the handle, not her wrist. "Keep your weight under it," he said. She adjusted. The water settled. He let go. Savannah finished the walk on her own. That was how it went. Through the morning, through the next, and the one after that. He showed her where things were kept. Feed sacks stacked along the barn wall, nails in a tin box near the workbench, a ledger tucked under a loose board by the window. He spoke when needed. Not more. Savannah learned by watching, by trying, by failing once and then doing it again. Each time she stumbled, he was there. Not touching. Never touching. But close enough that she knew he saw. By the third day, she noticed the patterns. The coffee was always poured before she woke. A clean shirt appeared folded at the foot of the bed when hers tore along the seam. Her boots, too big but whole, were set by the door before the sun came up. No words about any of it. Just done. That evening, she stood in the doorway, brushing dust from her skirt. The sky had turned a soft gray blue, the kind that comes just before night settles in. Inside, the lamp was already lit. Gideon sat at the table, a small sewing kit open in front of him. Her sleeve lay across his hand, needle moving in steady, careful lines. Savannah watched him for a moment. "You don't have to," she said. He didn't look up. "Needed doing," he answered. The thread pulled tight. He tied it off, set the needle aside, and placed the shirt back where she could reach it. Again, not close enough to brush her fingers. She took it. "Thank you," she said. He gave a small nod. Nothing more. Later, as the fire burned low, Savannah's eyes drifted upward. A narrow set of stairs led to the loft. The top step was dusted over, like it hadn't been used in a long while. At the end of the landing stood a door. Closed. She had passed it twice already without thinking. Now she watched as Gideon moved through the room. He paused near the base of the stairs. Just for a second. His gaze lifted, then dropped again. He turned away. Savannah followed that glance. The door stayed shut. That night, she lay on the far side of the bed, leaving space between them. The quilt held the day's warmth. The fire had burned down to embers, casting a low glow across the room. Gideon sat in the chair for a long while before lying down. He kept his distance even then. Back turned, hands still. Savannah stared at the ceiling. The wind had died completely. The silence pressed in, thick and unfamiliar. After a while, she shifted. just slightly. Not enough to close the space, just enough to feel the edge of it. Gideon didn't move, but she could tell he was awake. In the quiet, she listened to the rhythm of his breathing, slow, even, like the rest of the place, like nothing here rushed. Nothing reached where it wasn't asked to. Savannah closed her eyes. Her hand moved, almost without thinking, toward the space between them. She stopped short, then let it rest where it was. The distance held, but it no longer felt like a wall, more like something waiting. And for the first time in a long while, Savannah slept without waking to the sound of her own breath running ahead of her. Outside, the desert cooled. Inside, the house stayed still and untouched. For 3 mornings straight, the sky came up clean and pale. No wind, no dust. Just a thin line of light stretching over the ridge and settling into the yard like it belonged there. Savannah had started to move with it. She rose before the coffee cooled, pulled on the boots Gideon had left by the door, walked the same path to the well without looking down anymore. The rope still burned her palms, but less each time. The work found its own rhythm. Feet in the trough. Grain scattered low so the hens wouldn't panic. Water drawn slow so it didn't spill over. By midday, the sun pressed down hard, and the air held still long enough to hear small things. The shift of a saddle strap, the soft scrape of a shovel against dry earth. Gideon worked the far side of the barn most days, close enough to see, far enough to leave space. He spoke when needed, nothing more. A word about the fence line, a nod toward the tool she reached for before she asked. Once, when the hammer slipped from her hand, it landed upright in the dirt before she could bend for it. He had set it there. She hadn't seen him move. That afternoon, she noticed something else. A wagon track cut across the road beyond the fence. Fresh. Not deep, but recent enough to hold its shape. It hadn't been there the day before. Savannah stood still a moment, her hand resting on the bucket handle. "Company?" she asked. Gideon didn't look up from the post he was setting. "Maybe," he said. He drove the last nail in, straight, clean. Savannah turned back to the well. The bucket came up steady. The water held. Still, her eyes drifted once more to the road. By late afternoon, the light shifted. Long shadows stretched from the fence toward the barn. The air cooled just enough to carry sound. Hooves, not fast, not hidden, just coming. Savannah set the bucket down before it slipped. Her fingers tightened against the wood rim, then let go. Gideon stepped out from the barn. He didn't reach for a rifle, didn't call out, just moved to the open space near the porch and waited. The riders came into view over the low rise. 2 men. One older, dressed clean despite the road, coat buttoned, hat set low. The other younger, a badge pinned dull against his vest, eyes moving before the horse had even stopped. They pulled up just short of the gate. Dust settled around them. The older man smiled first. Not wide, not kind, just enough to show he meant to speak. "Afternoon," he called. Gideon gave a short nod. "What can I do for you?" The man's eyes slid past him, settling on Savannah where she stood near the well. "That her?" he asked. No one answered. The younger man shifted in his saddle, glancing between them. The older one stepped down. Boots hit the ground with a soft thud. He took his time brushing the dust from his sleeve before speaking again. "Name's Harland Crow," he said. "I'm looking for something that belongs to me." Savannah didn't move. Her hand had found the fold of her dress where the paper rested, hidden but not forgotten. Gideon's voice came even. "Nothing here's for sale." Harland let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh. "Not selling," he said. "Reclaiming." He reached into his coat and drew out a folded sheet. Clean, flat, untouched by flame. He held it up just enough to catch the light. Signed proper, he went on. Witnessed, sealed. The younger man, Deputy Miller, cleared his throat. Marriage certificate, he said, like he was reading it off something already decided. Savannah's fingers pressed tighter against the hidden paper. Harlan turned his head slightly, finally looking at her straight. You didn't think you could just walk off, he said. The wind picked up just enough to lift the edge of her skirt. Savannah stepped forward. Not far, just enough that she stood clear of the well. Her voice came low. I walked, she said. That part's true. Harlan's smile didn't change. You signed, he answered. Gideon didn't step between them. He didn't look at her. He only spoke. That's her business, he said. Savannah felt the weight of it settle. Not protection, not distance. Something else. Choice. Harlan folded the paper once more, slow and careful. We'll do this proper, he said. Town's got a sheriff, got a judge when needed. He glanced at Gideon. Wouldn't want to make trouble on your land. Gideon held his gaze. You already have. The deputy shifted again, uneasy now. Harlan gave a small shrug, as if none of it mattered much. Tomorrow, he said. We ride back through. You bring her with you. His eyes returned to Savannah. Or I come get what's mine. Silence settled after that. Thick, unmoving. Then Harlan turned, mounted up in one smooth motion. The deputy followed, slower. They didn't rush the road out, just rode the way they came, steady as before. Dust rose behind them, then fell. Savannah stood where she was long after the sound of hooves faded. Gideon didn't speak. He walked past her, back toward the barn, like there was still work to finish before dark. At the door, he paused, not turning. If you go, he said, I won't stop you. Savannah looked down at her hands. The skin was rough now, split in places. Dirt caught along the lines. Her fingers loosened slightly, then closed again. I know, she said. Gideon nodded once, though she couldn't see it. The sun dipped low, shadows stretched long across the yard, and for the first time since she'd crossed that threshold, Savannah understood. Nothing here would hold her. Not the walls, not the work, not even the man who had given her a place to stand. If she stayed, it would be because she chose to. The thought settled deep and did not move. That night came without wind. The sky stretched wide and clear, stars scattered sharp over the ridge. Inside, the cabin held a quiet that felt heavier than before, as if the walls had taken in everything said and left unsaid and kept it close. Savannah sat at the table long after the fire burned low. The cup in her hands had gone cold. Gideon moved through the room in his usual way, steady, measured. He checked the latch, added a small piece of wood to the coals, then took his place in the chair near the wall. He didn't look at her, not once. You'll head to town at first light? She asked. Her voice came out even, not soft, not sharp. Gideon rested his forearms on his knees. If you want to, he said. And if I don't? He lifted his eyes then, held hers just long enough. Then you don't. That was all. No argument, no urging, no weight added to either path. Savannah let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Later, when the room dimmed to shadows, she lay on her side of the bed again. The space between them felt different now. Not wide, not narrow, just waiting. Sleep didn't come easy. It came in pieces. A sound in the dark, a flicker of firelight. The memory of hooves cutting through dust. A voice she didn't want to hear again. She turned once, twice. Then the dream took her. She was running again, the ground cutting her feet open, the paper burning in her hand. A voice behind her, low, certain. "You signed." Savannah's breath caught sharp in her throat. Her eyes snapped open. The room was still, dark, real. Her hand had closed tight around the blanket, knuckles pale. For a moment she didn't move. Then she sat up. Gideon hadn't shifted. He lay on his back, eyes open, fixed on the ceiling. He had been awake. Savannah swung her legs over the side of the bed. The floor felt cool under her feet. She stood there, unsure what she meant to do. He didn't speak, didn't reach, just waited. Savannah took one step, then another. She stopped beside the chair, her shadow falling across him. "I don't sleep easy," she said. Gideon turned his head slightly. "I know," he answered. She almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny, because it was plain, because he hadn't needed her to explain. Her hand hovered for a second, then lowered, not to him, just to the back of the chair. "I don't want to go back," she said. The words stayed in the air. Gideon didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter than before. "Then don't." Savannah closed her eyes. That wasn't what she had meant. Not exactly, but it was what she needed. She stepped back, sat on the edge of the bed again. Neither of them moved closer, but the space between them felt less like a line. Morning came pale and quiet. Gideon was already outside when she woke. The sound of the well carried through the open door, rope creaking, water rising. Savannah dressed slower than usual. Her eyes lifted once more toward the stairs. The door at the top sat the same as before, closed, still. But now it pulled at her, not out of curiosity alone, something else. She crossed the room, one step, then another. The boards creaked under her weight as she climbed. Dust shifted at the edge of each stair. At the top, she stopped. Her hand hovered near the handle. For a moment, she thought about turning back, leaving it alone, like he had. Instead, she pressed down. The door opened with a low, dry sound. Inside, the air felt older. Sunlight slipped through a small window, catching on dust that had settled thick over everything. A chair stood near the wall, a folded dress draped across it. Blue, once, faded now. A small table held a stack of letters, tied, untouched. Savannah stepped in slow. Her fingers brushed the edge of the table, left a clean line in the dust. She didn't open the letters, didn't lift the dress. She just looked, long enough to understand, long enough to feel the weight of something that had stayed right where it was left. Behind her, a board creaked. She turned. Gideon stood in the doorway. He didn't step inside, didn't reach for the door, just stood there, his hand resting lightly against the frame. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said, 7 years. Savannah didn't ask. "I closed it," he went on. "Never found a reason to open it again." His eyes moved once across the room, not resting anywhere, not avoiding anything either. Savannah stepped back. She crossed the space between them and passed him without brushing his shoulder. At the stairs, she paused. "Some things don't need to be moved," she said. Gideon let out a slow breath. "No," he said. "They don't." They went down together, not side by side, but not apart. That night, the fire burned a little brighter. Savannah lay down first. A small shift, a quiet change. Gideon stood by the chair longer than usual. Then, slowly, he moved to the bed. He lay down on his side, leaving the same space between them. Savannah stared into the dark, waited. Her hand moved again. This time, it didn't stop. It crossed the space, not touching, just close enough to feel the warmth. Gideon didn't move, didn't close the distance, didn't pull away. He waited. Savannah turned her head. In the low light, she found his eyes. She gave the smallest nod. Gideon's hand lifted. Slow, careful. He rested it lightly over hers. No pressure. No claim. Just there. Savannah's breath steadied. Outside, the night stretched quiet across the land. Inside, something shifted. Not loud, not sudden, but enough. Enough to know the line between them had changed and would not return to what it was before. Dawn came quiet. No wind, no sound from the road. Just the slow rise of light over the ridge and the faint clink of metal as Gideon set a cup on the table. Savannah was already awake. She sat at the edge of the bed, boots in her hands, fingers resting along the worn leather as if feeling for something beneath it. Gideon didn't speak right away. He poured the coffee, set one cup down where it always went. Then he stepped back, giving her the same space he had from the start. "They'll be on the road by now," he said. Savannah nodded. She pulled on the boots, stood, and crossed the room. The cup was warm, steady in her hand. She drank it slower than before. Outside, the yard looked the same. Fence straight, trough half full, dust lying low across the ground. Nothing showed what was coming. They rode into town before the sun reached its height. Gideon saddled one horse. She climbed up behind him without asking. Her hands rested at his sides, not quite touching. The road stretched long and dry ahead. Wagon ruts cut deep where the ground softened near the creek bed. A broken sign leaned toward the ditch, its paint worn to almost nothing. Somewhere off to the right, a windmill turned slow, creaking with each pass. Neither of them spoke. The town came into view in pieces. First the church roof, then the line of hitching posts, then the boardwalk, empty at that hour except for a man sweeping dust into the same place it always gathered. They rode straight to the sheriff's office. Harlan Crow was already there. He stood near the doorway, hat tipped back, one hand resting easy against the post. Deputy Miller lingered a few steps behind him, shifting his weight like he wished he were somewhere else. Harlan smiled when he saw them. "Right on time," he said. Savannah slid down from the horse. Her feet held steady on the ground. Inside, the office was narrow. A desk near the window. Papers stacked in uneven piles. A coat hung on a peg, the badge pinned to it catching the light. Sheriff Dalton looked up as they entered. He was older than Savannah expected, lines set deep along his face, eyes that had seen too much to rush judgment. "This the matter?" he asked. Harlan stepped forward, placing the clean paper on the desk. "Signed and witnessed," he said. "She's bound to me." Savannah felt the weight of her own paper against her side. For a moment, her hand stayed still. Then she reached for it. The edges crumbled slightly as she pulled it free. The burn marks showed darker in the daylight. The ink uneven, but still there. She placed it beside his, not matching, not equal, but present. "That's what he used," she said. Her voice didn't rise, didn't break, just held. Sheriff Dalton leaned in, eyes moving from one page to the other. "Reverend'll know," he said after a moment. "Seal's his." Deputy Miller shifted again. "I can fetch him," he muttered. No one stopped him. They waited in the quiet. Savannah stood straight, hands at her sides now. Gideon stayed near the wall. Not close, but there. The door opened after a while. Reverend Cole stepped in, breath a little short from the walk. He removed his hat, nodded once to the sheriff, then moved to the desk. He didn't speak at first, just looked. His fingers traced the seal on Harlan's paper, then Savannah's. A long pause, then a small shake of his head. "That's not mine," he said. Harlan's smile faltered. "The mark," he started. "Not mine," the Reverend repeated. "And I keep record of every union. There's no entry for this." Silence settled hard. Sheriff Dalton straightened. "That settles that," he said. Harlan's jaw tightened. "You take her word over paper?" he asked. The sheriff tapped the desk once. "I take truth where I find it," he answered. Savannah let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Her hand moved to the paper again. This time she didn't grip it. She lifted it, looked at it once, then set it down. Flat. Like it had no weight left. Harlan stared at it for a long second. Then at her. "This ain't finished," he said. Gideon's voice came from the wall. "It is here." Harlan didn't answer that. He folded his paper sharp, turned, and stepped out into the light. The deputy followed, quieter than before. The door closed behind them. The room felt different after that. Lighter. Not by much, but enough. Outside, the town had started to stir. A wagon rolled past, slow. Someone called from across the street. Life going on like it always did. Savannah stepped out onto the boardwalk. She stood there for a moment, then turned. Gideon was just behind her. Same distance. Same steady presence. They rode back without hurry. The sun dipped lower by the time the ranch came into view. The land stretched wide and open, holding the quiet like it belonged there. Savannah slid down first this time. Her feet found the ground without a pause. She didn't move toward the house right away. Instead, she stood in the yard, looking out over the fence line, the trough, the place where she had first stopped running. Gideon stepped beside her. Not close, but not far. After a moment, he reached into the saddlebag and pulled out a folded shirt. He held it out. Stopped. His hand hovered there. "May I?" he asked. Savannah looked at him, at the space between them, at the hand that had never crossed it without reason. She didn't speak. She stepped forward, closed the distance herself, and that was answer enough. If you stood there in her place, dust still clinging to your boots, a past that nearly broke you still echoing in your chest, you might realize something simple. It isn't always the loud moments that change a life. Sometimes it's the quiet ones, a door that stays open, a man who doesn't reach unless you let him, a choice that's finally yours. Savannah didn't win by fighting harder than the world. She didn't outrun it either. She just stopped letting it decide who she belonged to. And maybe that's what stays with you after the story ends. Not the danger, not the chase, not even the fear. But the way someone can stand beside you without taking anything from you. The way trust isn't given all at once, but built in small, steady pieces. And maybe if you've ever had to start over, you know how rare that kind of ground is. So tell me, what would you have done if you were standing in that doorway? And if stories like this sit with you a little longer than expected, there are more waiting just ahead. Not louder, not bigger, just as real.